So, hey, good evening.
Hold on, I'm sharing the live. I'm sharing the live to like 10 to 15 people.
Sure, I'm trying to get my brother to get on here as well.
Yeah, I'm sending it to even our atheist friends, Ava and them.
Okay.
Mitch, if whatever he's doing.
I'm trying to get this to work.
Robbie, we get all our friends in here.
Okay. See, the problem is that my brother's trying to do this from the computer, and I don't know how to run the app from the computer.
Hold on, I'm gonna leave so I can follow somebody and invite them too, real quick, just real fast.
Okay. Why is this so difficult? Why is this so difficult?
And today, what the main thing that I'll ask of you is to allow me to stay within the bounds of my argument instead of going off of the topic. If you could do that.
Sure. I mean, what I want you to do is to present my brother with your claims about physics and about why you think science provides evidence for God and why physics provides evidence for
No,
God.
I think logic is evidence for God, but I think physics, for the premises to be true, the physics in between in the argument would have to be true, right?
Yeah. So provide all of that.
Yeah,
And
that's what I'm
I'm trying.
going to do. And I'm not proving theist God, so I'm not trying to
Yeah.
prove Christianity. I'm proving deism.
Sure. I'm still trying to get my brother to get on here.
That's fine.
He's having some issues with the. Maybe I can try to. Oh my God! Why is this so difficult? Hey, I spy.
What's up, all of my atheist friends? And maybe if I get a couple of theists, I have more atheist friends on this app than theists, but I have a couple. I have a couple theists.
Can you run a call, Tarzan?
Oh, what?
No, I was responding to a comment.
You're welcome, Wings. This is gonna be an interesting conversation. It's gonna be pretty. Hopefully, no interruptions, and it'll be pretty chill. Is what I'm hoping.
I'm talking to my brother to see what's going on.
Oh no, it's creates. TC creates.
Let me explain my cult real quick. So I'm playing the game Cult of the Lamb. It's a game, but I'm a cult leader, and I'm a cute little lamb.
Oh, that's nice. I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I'm trying to be
Yeah,
the least horrible cult leader. Like I'm trying to choose the like more moral like doctrine. I'm not even joking. It's just so bad.
what's the game called?
A
Cult
Cult
of the
of the
Lamb.
Lamb.
Hmm.
Yeah. No, Dwight, someone sent me a live where you were in a live debating abortion, and they sent me it just going like, "Hey, Dwight's debating, he might need some resources. Can you come in?" It was not you messaging me, it was someone looking out for you. Um that's all. Yeah, Cult of the Lamb. I recommend it for everybody. It by the way, at the beginning of the game, tell me if it doesn't sound familiar. You are to be the last sacrifice that will basically get rid of one of the old gods. But when they sacrifice you, that old god decides to resurrect you and save you, and you are to on a mission to convert a bunch of people to follow him instead of the other gods. Does that sound familiar to anybody?
Not, not to me.
It sees it really doesn't sound familiar to you at all.
I'm so out of. I'm trying to figure out. Oh my god.
Okay. I'm gonna give you a hint. Their name starts with Jesus.
Oh, is that what you're saying? I'm like half. Um, I'm like having two different conversations at once. I can't. My brain is just stringing.
You're fine. You're fine. Just wanted to just bring some
Oh,
entertainment to the live while you get everything set up. Yeah, so if anybody wants to know about the game, it's super fun. You get to take out the non-believers.
right.
Um,
I'm not.
yeah, your brother hooked up. 'Cause I'll dip when he does.
No, not yet. I'm gonna try to call him from Facebook.
That's perfect.
Oh god damn it. Why is it-
So who's all atheists in the chat? If you're atheist, type 1, and if you're theist or
Hey,
deist, type
hey,
2.
so is it letting you go live or no? Can you hear me? Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah, try press go live and see what happens when you do that. Let's see if once you're live, if I can get you on.
Said 3. 2 is theist, y'all. Not de
I'm sorry, the
or
people
deist.
counting in the comments.
Did, did you
Can I get a
accept
four
to
in the
the
chat?
camera?
Where's my energetic four?
Yeah, try to go live and let's see if I can get you from your live
Yeah.
onto mine.
Can I get my based five? Thank you.
I feel like
Yes.
if you get somebody else that's going live on the live, then I probably wouldn't be able to be on the live, like join in.
Where,
But I'm not sure
where's
about that.
my attractive six at?
I don't know what any of that means. Are you sure you don't want to just download it on your phone because it will be far easier?
Ooh, we got that bold seven. What about my like roundabout eight?
Yeah, if you don't. Oh really? I mean, like I said, I mean you can try to do it from the computer, but I don't know what the TikTok key or any of that means. Okay, so just try to do it from the phone and see how long that lasts.
I don't know what nullifidians are. I don't know what that is.
How charged is your phone? How charged is your phone? And doesn't let you plug in from the office. Oh, damn it. Okay. Well, we might have to. We'll do what we can, and then we can always do a part two. Okay, so uh, go go to what kind of phone do you have? Okay, so um, there should be a search bar where you can just type in TikTok, and it will bring you to the to where you can download it. Here, I can. Here. Do you have Facebook Message? Huh? Yes.
Ava.
Is it downloading the app? Is it downloading the app? What do you mean no? Nothing is happening. Wait, can you hear me now? Wait, can you hear me better now? Here. There should just be a thing that says download app next to where it says TikTok, and then you just download it. Sorry for the delay, guys.
One of my followers just passed away in my game.
What do you say?
One of my cult followers just passed away. Now I'm down to 6.
Here, I'll write it to you on Facebook.
He was a good lad.
Yes. Do you see a thing that says install or download? How's that possible? Like, I don't understand how that's not there. Any you don't see anywhere it says download? It should be right up top. The download should be right next to the icon. It should be right up top. Yes.
Yeah, I can keep everybody entertained with my game. So essentially, I'm playing Cult of the Lamb. I have 6 followers. I'm a cute little lamb that's on a mission to save everybody.
Yeah.
I send out missionaries.
Yeah, and with an exclamation point.
If anyone has any questions or anything you'd like me to teach the followers, I can attempt to do so.
My audio works.
Yeah, no, Cease is just trying to get his brother connected is all.
Yeah, so okay, are you I'm gonna check your do you see your inbox? Okay, so that's me having shared the live to you. Click on that.
Oh, hey, Aden, have you read
Let me
about
try
like the parasites
Are you on your
that like they're in wolves that make them like pack leaders?
Parasites?
Yeah. The toxic Plasmosa gondii parasite that's like found in cats.
No.
Okay, well you should look into that. So like when you handle cat poop, you got to be careful you don't get the parasite. But anyway, it
No,
makes you
click
not be as fearful.
does it show like a video I just sent you, like a thing you can
Okay, so
click
you
on?
still talks brother.
There we go.
Oh, we good? I
just sent you an invite. So
yeah, but Aiden, you should look it up from the Yellowstone Wolves. It's really cool.
I'm gonna
you'll have to.
There we go.
If you remember at the end of the live, then we can. Then if you can type.
I'm gonna hop down. I just was here for pure entertainment purposes. Bye.
Bye,
Artemis. David, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay,
Can you
there we
see
go.
me?
I can't
All
see
right.
you, but I can hear you. There should be a way to turn on your camera if you want to do that, but it's up to you.
Okay, I mean, I don't see it, but
That's fine. All right.
Okay, so
So Aden is going to provide to you his arguments about how he thinks that logic and physics provides evidence for God, and then you can respond with where you think he's gone wrong. All right?
yes.
okay.
So first, cease. I heard something about what you were talking about yesterday with contradiction. I was confused on what you were saying about what you were talking about with contradiction. And then after you talk about your opinion on contradiction and all that, if it can exist in reality, then I'll just move on from that and then give my argument.
I don't. It doesn't make any sense to say that you can have contradictions in reality. I wasn't saying that you can. What I'm saying is that there's nothing about the laws of logic that require any notion of God for there to be a grounding for logic. It's just not. That doesn't follow at all. So there, just because you presuppose, like, the whole idea of the presuppositionalist is they think you need God to ground knowledge, and there's no reason for that. But my brother doesn't have that much time because he had to
Okay,
do this
that's
from
fine.
his phone. So
So the physics,
yeah, go
the
ahead.
only physics that I would claim that would then prove God's existence through using logic is the universe, space, matter, and energy. And the question that I'd ask you, since I'm guessing you're a physicist, is space, matter, and energy interdependent, or is something independent to the other?
I don't really know what that means.
So basically, does space depend on matter and energy to be space, or and matter and energy depends on space to exist, which is interdependent, or is space
Okay, so
independent to matter and
what I
energy?
can say is that what we've learned over the last few centuries is that space, time, and matter are not fundamental. So you could go back a few centuries and you could imagine saying things like, well, space is something in and of itself. It's some kind of stage that's there, and on this stage you can have matter. And so matter is independent, but somehow matter and space are independent, but somehow you can get matter into space. And then you can say time is independent. It's some kind of parameter, and all of these things are independent quantities that are sort of brought together. And so you can talk about a universe in which you have, matter moving around in space as time goes by. So there's a sense in which they're independent quantities that are all brought together into a framework. Now that's
That
sort of,
wouldn't that make it interdependent?
well, what I'm saying is that there's a way of thinking of them as independent, and then you bring them together, and so,
Yes.
but you can think of them as being independent. But when you go in through the centuries, what we've learned from modern physics, in particular the theory of relativity, is that um, space and time are a kind of thing that is influenced by matter. So, in that sense, when you go into the theory of relativity, what you realize is that it's not really clear that they could make sense uh, in an independent way. So, there are some discussions as to what happens to space and time. There have been decades of discussions about what to make of space and time if you slowly get rid of all the matter and energy in the universe. Is there such a thing now? Because they seem to be connected to each other in some way in the theory of
Yes.
relativity.
So basically, what I'd be asking essentially is that if any of those are independent to each other, if matter, if
Independent of
let's
each other?
if you're saying each and everything the space is independent, the matter's independent, but it's all like combined together in a way, then what I would ask is how what would happen if there were no energy in space and it was just matter?
That's not a meaningful question. So,
It would be proving that it's interdependent or
no,
independent.
it's not a meaningful question. So, matter is a form of energy. So, with the fundamental stuff at a certain level, right? So, it depends on how deep you want to go. So, at some level, you want to talk about energy and momentum. That's the more fundamental kind of thing. So maybe energy is a more fundamental thing than to talk about matter. So matter is kind of like a form of energy. So energy, let's just talk about the stuff in the universe. Okay, the stuff in the universe seems to have an effect on space and time. And so they're not independent quantities. Now, whether you want to talk about getting rid of the energy, that's the better way to describe this, the energy of the universe, what happens to space and time, this is not entirely clear. So is there a space and time if there is no energy content to the universe? What that means exactly is sort of philosophically something that, of discussion.
From what I learned from, and you can say I'm wrong, I learned that when there's space, there's matter and energy. That's just how it is. If there's space, there's matter and energy. I've not learned about anything that says space has existed without matter and energy. Therefore, that's why I and some other sources that I could show to you
Okay,
deem
so
it to be interdependent.
the theory of general relativity says that as you get rid of the matter or the energy in the universe, you end up with what's called flat space and time. So there's a mathematical solution to the equations which gives you this limit. But that's a mathematical solution. Now, exactly what that means is that a real possibility? That's sort of a philosophical question. But there is a limit. There's a mathematical solution to a space-time without matter and energy. It's called flat space-time. Special relativity is the mathematical description of what the world is like if you think of it as completely void of the matter and energy that affects the space and time. So there is a mathematical solution to that. Now, whether that's a possibility,
is space independent to time?
So there is a mathematical solution to that. Now, whether that's a possibility,
is space independent to time?
So there is a mathematical solution to that. Now, whether that's a possibility,
is space independent to time?
Such that the speed of light is always the same regardless of your perspective. Yeah, so relativity begins. So space and time are interdependent too. Space and time seem to be in theory of relativity fundamentally interconnected. So depending on how you move in the universe, you either move. If you move more through space, you find yourself moving less through time, and vice versa.
The issue that I would have is if it's going to claim something in the theory that it seems to be interconnected or that it is interconnected, how can you go against that with no evidence?
I don't understand what you're asking me.
Yeah, I don't know.
Basically, I'm saying that if it says something is interdependent or interconnected in that theory, which it literally does, space
yes.
Then I'm saying that that's my claim. That's my claim, and then I can further through deductive reasoning prove God exists. But in order for me to not be able to prove
space, time, and matter are interconnected in general relativity, yes. Okay.
So I'm saying
what does it have to do with
that's my
God?
argument.
Yeah, what does it have to? How does that suggest anything about a God existing?
But first, I would like to say this, and I'll get into my next premise. But what I'm saying with this is, in order for you to disprove this next premise, you'd have to say that I am not substantiating this premise right here, and you would have to prove to me that something is independent, like space is independent to time, and it's not even connected at all. It's like something independent to it. So, but since we agree that it's interconnected, I can get into my next premise, and my next premise is literally just that. This is deistic God, which is independent and necessary. There has to be something that's independent in front of that to even exist, or there's going to be an infinite regression. Now, I would like to be proven how there can't be how to substantiate infinite regression to where
I don't know what the fact that general relativity brings together space, time, and matter in a way that you can say they're interconnected. I don't see what that has to do with any of the other things that you've just said.
Yeah, and this is the same problem that I brought to you. You seem to be connecting things that don't follow logically whatsoever. Like what does an infinite regression have to do with space and time being connected in general relativity?
Because none is independent to each other, so it's just going to be dependent things forever.
Dependent things forever. What?
Yes,
David, do you know?
Especially if it's eternal.
This doesn't. I don't see the. I don't understand the comment.
You don't. Okay, so infinite regression is a series of appropriately relative,
Infinite
related.
regression isn't a theory. Infinite regression is a feature that may or may not exist.
No, like it's literally
in the
like
real world.
What infinite regression literally is saying there's a first. So there's a first thing. So this thing happens, but there's no last thing. It's just infinitely happening. Like this first thing is just the same thing goes on forever and forever, and that is the
That's not
fallacy.
infinite regression. That's not. Well, how? Well, hold on a second. That is not.
I'm not sure how we got into infinities from space, time, and matter being interconnected.
What I'm saying is, I'm pointing out a fallacy, and that especially if that is eternal, that is fallacious and logic.
Who said anything about eternal? We're talking. We
Some
agreed that
atheists,
space, time, and matter are interconnected.
Yes.
Then you jumped into things like infinities and regressions. What is the connection there?
Okay, I'll ask a question. How is it possible for interconnected things to be interconnected with nothing that is independent to the other?
So I think he's talking about. Are you suggesting that these things would have to be caused?
I'm suggesting that they have to have like something to fix the fallacy that I see with it.
What fallacy?
I basically see. I'm telling you, I see infinite regression with this, and let me explain how I see infinite regression. I'm explaining that this is a dependent thing. So space is a dependent thing, depending on time. It's interconnected, but they still are both dependent. For example,
I don't know what that means. See, this is not. These are not words that make sense of the theory.
Let me give an example.
The theory talks about space and time being related in a very specific way, such that the speed of light is always has the same value.
Yes, it's interconnected.
They're dependent in some abstract sense. It's a very precise kind of connection between them.
Yes, interdependent.
Such that when you move through space-time, if you move through space more, you move less through time, such that mathematically you can show that you get the same value for the speed of light.
When you say
connection. So I don't know what you mean when you say space depends on time.
Yes, let me explain it. Do you know what it means for it to be interconnected? It means the state of being dependent upon one another. That's what interconnected is. That's what interdependent is. That's what we're saying. I'm saying that this is dependent. Space is dependent and time is dependent with each other. Mutually dependent with each other. Interconnected.
They're connected.
Yes, they're still
in
both
such
dependent.
A way that the speed of light is always the same.
For example, let me give my example.
That's the best statement that I can use in words. I can put together in words.
Let me explain what I'm meaning by saying this. All this. So, for example, I have a mom. My mom is independent to me, but she is still dependent on something else. What I'm saying is, space is not independent to time. Space is dependent with time, and time is dependent with space. There's nothing that's that final independent thing to be in front of space and time now in science. So what I'm saying is,
I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah, I think he's suggesting that he thinks there needs to be some first cause of everything else.
No, but none of this follows from anything. I can think of space entirely on its own at a given moment of time. So I can look at the theory, solve the equations, get what space is by inputting a time parameter. There's one fixed value of time. There's a label on the entire universe, and that universe is a configuration of matter and energy in space.
I agree with
that's a solution to the equations of general relativity. So I can conceive a notion of space.
Everything you're going to say, I agree with, because you've already said that it is interconnected, and I believe that to be true, and I have the sources that explain that is true, the general relativity.
I'm not sure what that means. I mean, we're talking about a theory. It's not like you have sources that confirm this. We're talking about a theory that has observational support now over a century, right? So it's a theory, and theories are things that have lots of observational support. It's not like you have evidence on your own from somewhere.
Not for God, but I have this is my logical argument, but I don't have evidence for God. I'm saying I have evidence to confirm what you're saying, basically, that it's interconnected.
So where do you get from anything that was just said any notion of
interconnection? Okay,
yeah, and then therefore God. Like you keep saying fallacy. Where is what fallacy is there?
There's infinite regression, And I'll explain. Let me explain. Well, let me ask you a question so that I can explain it kind of that way. Maybe I would ask you, how would there not be an independent thing to two things that are dependent and not independent to each other? So like space is not independent to something. So how do you substantiate that there's no need for a first cause if that's
I'm
infinite
not sure
aggression?
what first
Yeah, wait.
causes have
So,
anything to.
Hold on.
First
Emdir,
causes have.
before, my brother doesn't have that much time, so let's get my
that's fine.
brother to say what he has
Yes.
to say first, and then after we can go.
We've agreed to my argument though. So after this, we've agreed to my interconnected, not God, but interconnection. We agree. That's the main argument.
So Aden, let's give
That
my
isn't.
brother a chance to respond to this first cause
Yes,
idea.
I will.
Go ahead, David.
Okay, so what does first cause have to do with the theory of relativity?
Okay, because it's stating that there are two dependent things as the final part of our whole universe that exists. They're both dependent, space and time, or space, matter, and energy are still interconnected too. So what I'm saying is, how do we substantiate that two dependent things don't need something independent to it?
How is it possible for two things, for like space
Two
and
dependent. They're
matter,
both
or space and
dependent.
time,
Yes, they're all
to
dependent.
exist
All of them are
without
dependent. Yes.
without
Basically, he's
the
asking
third?
how does space and time exist without a cause? Is what I think he's trying to
Yes,
say.
they're all dependent, and we know that they're dependent. How do we substantiate that there's no need for something independent to dependency? That's my question, and then you win.
I'm not sure. You think that you're going to get through logic to understanding the fundamental nature of space, time, and energy? I mean, this is what you're suggesting?
Like
No.
what he's saying. What he's saying is that in his mind, because he thinks that time and space are dependent, that they need to be caused by some independent thing, which is then he's going to call God.
Yes, that's the deistic God. That's deism. That's God.
Okay,
There's deism God.
the theory of relativity deals with certain kinds of things: space,
Okay.
time, matter, and energy.
Yes.
And these things almost certainly are not fundamental.
What do you mean by that?
So, if you want, it means that there's something deeper to their nature, and what that is, people are exploring in deeper theories. Nobody thinks that general relativity is the end story of physics. It's what's called an emergent theory, right? So space, time, and matter, we can think of them as having deeper features, and those deeper features look very different. And so the
Yes.
description of the world would not be in terms of space, time, and matter. It would be in terms of something else, which would give way to space, time, and matter. So whatever fundamental nature you're looking for ultimately is gonna be somewhere down deeper. It's not going to be in terms of space, time, and matter.
Are you suggesting that there's going to be something that's fully independent to space, time, matter, and energy? There's going to be something fully
What I'm
independent.
suggesting, which is that if you go a little bit deeper, you'll start to realize that things like cause, and in particular cause and effect, is not the kind of thing that's going to help you understand what's there.
What I'm saying is, if there's anything that is independent, that is the definition of God, since nothing natural is independent. It's all dependent on each other.
That doesn't make any sense. You're assuming that, again, listen to what David just said. He said that if you're still looking at things in a way of cause and effect, which he's saying is emergent. So for you to assume that the fundamental nature is going to be this mind which causes things into existence with intention and desires and a design, none of that is compatible.
I didn't say design.
No, okay, but we
because
know.
what we've realized is that we've developed human minds have developed in a very specific kind of environment where space, time, and matter are by and large intuitive. And this intuition lends itself to a description in terms of cause and effect. But cause and effect start to disappear. They're not fundamental quantities. They emerge out of something that is not only not only doesn't have cause and effect, but at some level has cause and effect. So in order to explain certain phenomenon, right, you need to postulate cause and effect together with effect and cause. You reverse order of things altogether to explain the kinds of observations, the experiments that are now being done in quantum laboratories where they
So
study quantum
let me
effects.
grasp.
So let me just make
Okay,
the
I got you.
punchline here, is to produce the punchline, which is that no, you're not going to get a fundamental description of the nature of the universe according to science if you talk in terms of, if you cling to cause and effect relationships as being fundamental, because they're not.
Can you substantiate how they are not fundamental?
Experiments.
Cause and effect are in experiments though, and like all experiments actually.
To explain the experiments, right? So to explain certain kinds of experiments that have been done in recent years, you need to postulate not only cause and effect, not only A causes B to explain the
Yes.
experimental results, but at the same time, B causing A together. So, have you ever heard of quantum superposition?
B causes A. I've never heard of effect causing the cause ever in my life.
Right. So because our intuition is all about cause and effect. Because at the macroscopic
That's
level,
how it goes.
that's at the macroscopic level where we operate. Our brains operate like this because we live in a certain kind of environment and we develop intuitions, and you cling to these intuitions. But what I'm telling you is that to explain experiments, very modern experiments, you have to postulate that in what's going on is not only a cause and effect relationship between
But
A
it's
and
an
B, but at
effect
the
and a
same
cause.
time, in a quantum superposition, effect leads to cause, B to A and A to B at the same time to
Oh
explain
yeah,
the
that's perfect.
experiments.
Yeah, there are chemical reactions where they're reversible. They're reversible processes.
This is
So
not, I'm not talking about reversibility. You're talking about the second law of thermodynamics. I'm not talking about chemistry. I'm talking about quantum effects. So I'm talking about a deeper level, and where the cause and effect relationship that you're clinging to starts to disappear. And so what I'm saying to you is that you're not going to get cause and effect if you're not going to be using cause and effect if you want a fundamental description. They'll start to disappear. They're emergent quantities, and they get twisted. They get all twisted up in knots. These are
okay.
concepts that are intuitive to us, and so we only get a superficial, emergent description of the world if we use them. But when we go deeper, they disappear.
So when we go deeper, so basically you're suggesting that there is only effect. There's no cause to the universe.
No,
There's
that's
only
not what I'm
effect.
saying at all. No, that's not what I'm
If
saying
there
at all.
if it's not what you're saying, then there's a cause. If it
But
is
I
what you're
but I said
saying,
I
then
said
there's
it
no
in very
cause.
precise words. I said cause and effect to cause. Okay, both kinds of things are needed to explain the experiments, and
Yes.
What do you
I can
so I'm not
explain
saying that effect precedes cause
I can
in
explain
absolute terms.
I can explain effect back to the cause, which is what I'm saying is independent, and I can explain independence to the effect.
I'm not sure what that means.
You're
Yeah,
saying
I
you're
don't think you're
saying
tracking,
you're saying
Aiden.
with B we should be able to lead back to A through because of B happening. And what I'm saying is if these things are interdependent, then B, which is the B, I'm saying that
This
leads
has
back
nothing
to
to
the
do
A.
with dependence. These are relationships between physical events.
So you're saying there's no cause and it's only
No,
effect.
but that's not what I'm saying.
Can you explain what you would be
I'm saying
talking?
that in order to explain, you want to cling to cause and effect as being a very important idea. And what I'm saying to you is that that's a bad idea. That comes from our intuition. You want to
Yes.
use your intuition, and you want to cling to that intuition. You want to put that intuition high up on a pedestal and explain the ultimate nature of reality. What I'm saying to you is that you can't even explain basic quantum experiments with that intuition. And so you don't want to use that to explain the ultimate nature of reality.
So then how do I explain there's obviously something has happened, we're here. So obviously there's an effect. So it's either
No,
right now you're
we
saying
clearly, there's a description of the world in terms of cause and effect. Cause and effect is very important. The macroscopic world that we live in makes very
Through
good
cause and
sense in terms of
effect.
cause and effect. Absolutely.
Mhm.
But that's not that you would think. Again, our intuition is that cause and effect is fundamental. We're going to see that kind of thing at every scale we look at. And instead, when we look across the universe and we look into atoms and we look at places that are completely unfamiliar to us, these kinds of explanations start to disappear. They no longer become useful. And what we've learned from modern science is that we shouldn't be using our intuition, the intuition that we've developed through evolution. We're a certain kind of creature that lives in a certain kind of environment. We've developed brains, and those brains are not really useful to us. Well, the concepts that come from those brains, we have to get around our intuitions if we want to get at the fundamental nature of reality. We're not there yet, but you certainly don't want to put high up on a pedestal things like cause and effect. That's what I'm saying.
Can you logically show, by the way, why you go from this idea of first cause to God being a first cause?
You mean the effect leading back to the first cause being God?
Yeah, like you're assuming that the first cause has to be a deity, when if you read someone like Graham Opry, he says that you can, even if you had the first cause, which again, the entire point of what my brother is saying is that this disappears, you still don't get to a mind being the cause of anything. This is more assumption. There's nothing logic. You keep saying that you're proving God with logic, but you're not. You're just making up a story.
Okay, so the reason why the reason why independent is a label for deism God, is because nothing in nature is independent. And why I'm saying this effect has a cause, and I'm saying like this actually is what happens, is because I will not live my life believing in fallacy, and I believe it is a fallacious to believe that interconnected things is the first thing that happened, because they're both dependent. Something that's first would be independent.
David, do you have any idea what he's talking about? Like, where's this notion of first comes in the context of physics?
Something. Okay, so you're saying that there's no first, there's only last.
There's no first what?
There's no first anything. You're
There's
saying
no
that
first
nothing
cause?
happened first. Nothing, not even like
Nothing
you're saying
happened. I never
space.
said this, but I never said this.
Well, can I ask a question to better understand then?
Yes.
So what are you claiming about space and time itself being interconnected? Are you saying that that's not a first cause?
I'm not sure what that means. See, space time, the theory of general relativity says that matter and energy curve space and time.
It says it's all interconnected too. It says it's
So
literally
you could use words to that effect. Yes.
And what I'm saying is, if that is the first thing that happens,
See, I don't know what that means. Now you're talking about some other concept. The first thing that happens.
yes.
How did you smuggle that in to the ideas of space, time, and matter being interconnected?
Okay, I'd ask another question to better understand what your opinion is on if the universe is eternal or not. Do you think the universe is eternal, or do you think it has
I
a
don't
beginning?
know.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's what I was telling
When
you
we
before.
so what you can do is look at how time. I'm a scientist, so I look at how time appears in the physical descriptions, right? The things called the laws of physics.
Yeah.
And uh, the answer doesn't pop out to us. There's no thing that shows time should have a beginning. In fact, if anything, time seems to be again not fundamental, and it would be strange. Now, this also depends on the scientists. People have differing opinions, but I think
Yes.
it's fair to say that it
I
would
can
be kind
argue
of
both ways, though.
strange to say that time has a beginning.
I can argue for even the question of it being eternal. I can argue for it having a beginning, and if it is eternal, there would be an eternal dependency.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
Is that wrong?
Yeah, I don't think that means anything.
Okay,
Okay.
so this dependency. So here's, I often use this analogy. When you think of all of the events in space and time, like as in a book with pages and descriptions of events happening, the lives of people, it's a novel of some sort. right? Explain to me? That's sort of that's a decent analogy for understanding something about relativity. All of the events in the novel are there; they're just on different pages, but none of the pages influences any of the other pages. They're all just sort of independently sitting there, right? You wouldn't use things like page 7 causes page 8, right? Because they're just independent of each other sitting there.
Without page 7, there's no page 8.
Well, that's actually a different conversation. What I'm saying is, can you connect page 7 to page 8 in terms of the story?
What I'm saying
makes sense.
What I'm saying is leading all the way up to space and time. I'm saying without space, there's no time. Without time, there's no space because it's interconnected. I'm saying that all that says there's a cause, in my opinion.
Now you're talking about something else, because the theory doesn't say that space and time must
It's interconnected.
exist. They're interconnected in a specific way. There's no theorem that says space and time have to exist.
And again, so you're going back now to this idea of cause, where causes, if anything, are emergent features of what we observe within space and time. But now you're suggesting that space and time themselves have its own cause, and you call that cause
No,
God.
I'm saying that every single thing. I'm saying that space and time at the very beginning have a cause. Deistic God means that it's
what does that mean to say space and time at the beginning?
I'm saying
for you to believe in deism implies something about time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, for you to believe in deism would be basically that the God does not interfere right now. So God would have set up the space and time, which is dependent, and then God would be independent, and then would not interfere no longer, and then things would just happen.
But again, when you say space and time at the beginning, you're already smuggling in a notion of time. You're talking about these concepts incorrectly. Is the problem? There's no reason, there's no evidence, there's no argument.
We've literally both agreed. We've all agreed. We've all agreed that it's interconnected.
Yeah, it's not. So what? That doesn't mean because it's interconnected that there is some prime or original cause of all other things. This notion of interconnectedness does not lead to the kind of assumptions that you have been making this entire time. You're throwing in a bunch of concepts that don't belong together.
So I made my argument. It's substantiated because we all agree that it's interconnected. Can you please substantiate that there's nothing that would be independent to two dependent things that literally need something independent to it? Can you substantiate?
Hold on. So when you say that, so we'll just call time A and we'll call matter B. So when we say A depends on B, and then B depends on A, it's just to say that in order for A to exist, B has to exist. In order for B to exist, A has to exist. Now that doesn't actually seem to get you to the contingency, because you could just say something like they both always exist, and then there's no problem. I don't see what the problem would be.
The problem is that it would be two dependent things in an infinite regression.
Yeah, well, why is that a problem?
That's a problem because that's literally fallacious.
Wait, what do you think fallacious means? How are you using that term?
It's literally it's false. It's it can't
false?
be. Yeah,
it can't be I get that you think it's false. I'm asking for some argument or justification for that.
Some justification?
Yeah, why do you think that that's false or impossible or fallacious?
It's an unsound argument.
That's the claim again.
So again, you're just saying the same thing. You have to show how.
Well, hold on. I'm going to explain it. I'm going to explain it. One dependent thing, depending on another dependent thing, isn't that basically contradiction? They both can't exist at the same time without something independent.
No.
Wait, why? Where's the contradiction?
It's a dependent thing depending on a dependent thing.
Yeah, A depends on B. Yeah, A depends on B. B depends on A. I don't see what the problem is. I don't see the contradiction.
There is none. You don't know the terms you're using.
When is that a possibility?
Hey, you're the one who's claiming it's an impossibility. I'm just agnostic to it. I'm just asking for some argument that it's impossible.
Because from what I know, from what happens in reality, my mom is independent to me, but my mom is still dependent. So these things are dependent. Leading all the way back to this, there's always been something independent to something else, but up to this, it's whenever it becomes dependent, independent.
let me help you out a
Or you
little
say
bit
that
here.
always
So
existed.
yeah, let me help you out a little bit here. So like when you say like, oh, A is dependent on B, and then you infer that like A can fail to exist, that's only in virtue of the fact that B can fail to exist, right? If B is actually like necessary or something, then it's just the fact that A is dependent on B doesn't mean that it can fail to exist, right? Because if B is always going to exist, A is always going to exist. So if they're just both dependent on each other and they're just both necessary, I just don't see what the problem is going to be.
David,
That they
real quick.
always exist.
David, can you? So you know how a lot of theists claim that an infinite regression is fallacious, that you couldn't have an infinity.
Mm-hmm.
Can you address that from a physics perspective? Why that whether you agree or disagree as to that notion?
Well, let me simply point out that if the concept of infinity were a problem, you would expect it not to be important in physical theories. Yet it's everywhere. We basically couldn't do physics without infinity, without the concept of infinity. So it would be kind of strange that fundamentally you can sit there and argue against the concept of infinity. It's a very tricky concept. I mean, we can't wrap our minds around it. But again, that's because we are a certain kind of creature. But infinities appear everywhere in physics. You have to make sense of them. But you can tame infinities.
Well,
That's part of the
Amdir,
project of physics. And so that's all over the place.
Well,
for me to
couldn't
substantiate, let,
Aden's like cause, I guess his argument for first cause be the infinity,
I don't know what that means.
for something to be
meaning
independent.
that cause is the infinite.
Wait, maybe
I
I
don't
could
know what
just say
that
what I
means.
take like independent to be, Aden, and then you can tell me whether or not you're using the term
Let me
in a different way
substantiate.
than
Let
I
me
am.
substantiate. Yeah.
Okay.
So how I believe it with my using my logic is that something. So these two things are interconnected, both dependent on each other. You're saying if this is infinite, or if this is eternal and necessary, how come? Why would it need a cause? Or why would it need a cause? How I think about this is an infinite effect. So it's an infinite effect with no cause. So why would there ever be a cause to anything if this
Huh?
is just an infinite effect?
So maybe you can lay this out
That's like
formally
not a
because it
part of
just kind
logic.
of sounded incoherent. That's just like, do you think you could lay it out like premises and a conclusion, like some sort of deductive argument?
This is basically as a whole is basically like my inductive or deductive argument.
Well, I mean,
I
inductive
don't know what
arguments
So
you.
just think
usually
about
have
this.
like
Just think
inference
about it in my
rules,
perspective.
premises, those sort of things.
Just think about it in my perspective. You said a dependent thing depends on something else that's dependent, but those two things always exist, right?
Yeah, like look, I'll use your mom example, right? So like you're dependent on your mom, and the fact that you're dependent on your mom means you can fail to exist, but that's only because your mom can fail to exist, right? If your mom couldn't fail to exist, the fact you're dependent on her doesn't mean you can fail to exist. So when you have like A dependent on B, B dependent on A, if they were both necessary, then there's not really like some problem where either
The
one of them
issue
could fail to exist.
Here's the issue. I'm dependent on my mom, but my mom is not dependent on me.
Yes,
In
Yeah.
this case, I believe that that either space or time, since let's just talk about the interconnectedness, since space and time are both dependent, I'd believe that one would have to substantiate that space is independent to time or that time is independent to space to say that there's no God to exist.
I don't know why that would be. I just haven't seen an argument for it. I've like
My argument is back.
you've just asserted it a few times.
My argument is back to the example. I depend on my mom, and my mom is independent to me, but my mom does not depend on me.
You're
So
not. I don't think you're
Yeah,
hearing.
but
You're
why,
hearing
what
this.
does that mean? Like, what's the implications of that? Like, you say, like, yeah, I agree with you, but I don't see any further implication,
the
right?
implication to that is that leads all the way back to these two dependent things. Cause and effect leads all the way back to
No, wait,
interconnection.
why would that be? Like, why would the fact that you're dependent on your mom and your mom's not dependent on you, right? That there's not that kind of interdependent relationship between you and your mom, why would that imply that no relationships of that kind exist?
What is something that is in the what is something? Give me an example of something that is interdependent that does not have anything independent to it. Give me one
Why?
example.
Why would I
Give
do
me
that?
what?
Yeah, why would I do that?
This is how you substantiate. This is how you substantiate.
Wait, why would I? I'm not trying to substantiate anything. I'm not making any claims here.
Well, the
I'm
claim,
just not convinced of your claim that this sort of relationship's impossible.
yes,
So
and
yeah,
my claim is that
I could
every
fail.
single thing that we
I could like,
know.
yeah, I could just fail to give any examples, and it still wouldn't like prove that it's impossible or something.
Okay,
David,
my
David,
point.
hold
My
on, Aiden,
point.
hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second. David, are you tracking any of this?
Well, we just made an effort a while ago to point out how cause and effect are not fundamental. And what I'm hearing is that you then circumvented all of that because cause and effect is ultimately what you want to hold dear
What I'm trying to
and
say
use that
though,
for something.
the reason why I'm saying cause and effect has always is what I'm holding on to, is because I'm trying to make the argument that that is how it has always been up to space and time being interconnected. So I'm saying since that is how it has always been, there
What
must
does that
be.
mean? It has
This is a
always been.
deductive.
What do
This
you
is a
mean by it? This
deductive
is the way it's
argument.
always been.
This
What
is
do
a
you mean by it?
deductive
This is the
argument
way
where
it's always been.
my premises are not so here's the point. My premises are not fallacious. My premises are true all the way up to the
No,
point of space and time, meaning my
but
mom's
they're not.
independent
But
to
Aiden,
me, I'm dependent
Wait,
on my
can
mom.
we just get the
Aiden,
premises? Can we just like get the premises laid out? If he's saying it's a deductive argument, I just want like premise 1 to however many there are, and then the conclusion. We
Okay,
can just check it for validity.
so premise one, everything that we know of other than space and time being interconnected has something independent to itself. So something dependent in the universe that happens has something independent to it, whether even when it is interconnected like our heart and our brain. So therefore, leading up to space and time, since it's always been that way within nature, then space and time is interdependent. Even interdependent things have an independent cause to it. I am saying that there must be an independent cause to that. Now, let's make an argument against that and try to substantiate that there has not always been an independent thing to something interdependent or dependent. That's my
Yeah.
point. If you
Okay,
can't argue against that,
wait.
then
Well, that's not how arguments work. But I'll let C Skull. I try and write this down and like make sense of it.
so
here, let me write it down. I got my computer. I'll write down my premise for you to understand.
yeah, so Aiden, again, you keep going to this. You're making assumptions about what interdependency leads to. You have just been explained by a physicist at length why causality is an emergent feature, not a fundamental one, and you want to just, I don't know what is meant by it's always been the case that causality was a thing. Like,
Didn't he? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't he say that the emergence, I guess, is deeper and kind of has a mystery to it? Does it not? Like we don't really know and understand the emergence.
well, what are you talking to about what my brother said
What
or
I
what
mean in
Aiden
the
said?
beginning, like with space and time, and they're coming or emerging out of something, like whatever that is a mystery, is what I'm saying. Like they're still trying to work it out in science and what it
Yeah,
is exactly.
yeah, but what do you say to that, David?
Yeah, so you could say that space, time, matter, and energy, cause and
Mm-hmm.
effect, are
Mm-hmm.
all emergent properties. They're not fundamental, which means when you go deeper, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You guys are trying to understand the fundamental nature of reality, what's ultimately true. When you go
Mm-hmm.
deeper, these concepts disappear. They give way to something else. That something
Right.
else gives rise to these kinds of things,
you would
and
have
they're
to
useful
substantiate
for
my
describing our world, but they're not
Right.
fundamental.
my
Right.
point
But
is
they're not. But they're also,
here.
like you
Let
said,
me turn on
they
my
it
camera.
kind of goes away and it disappears. Like there's a mystery to it. Is what I'm saying.
But
Well, yes,
yeah,
sure.
Yeah, that's what
but
he said. I thought that's
but
what he said. So
but the
People are exploring these things.
what
Okay,
right,
doesn't
you're exploring
follow.
these things.
There are people there,
I'm not
they're
trying to make an argument.
at the
All I'm
frontiers of
saying
knowledge.
is.
People are trying to understand things like what is
Mm-hmm.
space, and
Mm-hmm.
there are some tentative answers that space is something related to quantum physics.
for you to
It's
make the
something that
claim,
involves entanglement. So it's something completely different from our common sense notion of space.
for you to make a
Perhaps
claim,
time is like that.
Mm-hmm.
here's my argument. For you to make a claim that cause and effect is not necessary, you would have to substantiate that anything that has ever happened in the universe
Okay,
is
you're not
interdependent.
listening to my premise. So I've
Well,
made
I didn't even
my
finish.
description. I don't. I think we're going in circles at this point,
We're
guys.
not. We're
I'm
not. I
gonna.
promise we're not. This is very important.
Well, I can only repeat myself so many times. I can only say cause and effect is not fundamental. I can't.
Can you
I tried to
explain what
describe
you
some of
mean
these
by
features.
fundamental? Can you
I
define
tried to
fundamental?
describe how modern experiments mix, confuse cause and effect to the point where you can't even recognize it anymore.
Can you
Yet you want to
define
cling to
fundamental?
it. I think this is what we conclude is that you want to use your intuition to get at the fundamental nature of reality, and this is a problem. Okay, this is more a problem now. People have tried to do this thing in the past, right? The Kalam argument is this kind of thing. But modern science teaches us that our intuitions are not good. We keep tricking ourselves. So you want to talk about cause and effect? I'm saying this is a no-go.
Can you please answer? Can you please substantiate what I'm telling you? What I'm saying.
Yes,
So
you're
here's my
telling me
argument.
that cause and effect is fundamental, and it's not.
What define
What else can I
fundamental for me?
say?
Define fundamental for me real quick.
What's
Necessary?
deep? What's true at the deepest level of
Necessary, right?
reality?
Necessary.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. What's true may not be necessary at all.
What's true is necessary.
But that's just
No,
your
you could
claim
have
because you have an intuition and you want to cling to your intuitions.
you could
How
have
is
a
something
contingent
true?
truth.
How is something true not something that is necessary?
You could have a contingent truth.
Okay,
You're
here's
You're
my
not
argument.
saying
stating
that that's true. That could have
stating
been
that the
otherwise.
ultimate nature of reality is necessary. That's just a claim.
So here's my argument. Here's my premises for y'all.
I've heard it. I've heard it 30 times at this point. You keep saying the same thing.
Here, all interdependent things, like a heart and
I've heard
brain,
this.
has an independent thing to it for it to exist. Therefore, leading all the way up to space and time being interdependent, since this is how it has always been for nature, you'd have to substantiate that this is not how it's
I know
always
what that
been
means.
for this to be
This is how it's
false.
always been for nature. You're just making
Substantiate.
claims about the way you want fundamental reality to be. And none
Then
of this holds up.
please tell me what is dependent on something else that is dependent that has
Nothing,
nothing independent to it in the
no
universe.
argument about dependencies needs to be made. We have to go and explore the world and see what kinds of tools we need to describe it. And these kinds of words end up not being useful. We
I'm asking.
find that logic is not always as useful as you
I feel
claim it to be to
I feel
explore the
like you're
world.
an argument from incredulity because I'm
No, at
asking you a
all.
question and you're not even like answering my question.
No, he did. He answered the question the entire live, and it's
No,
not an argument from incredulity at all. It's you who provides an argument from incredulity because you think that unless there is a God, none of this can be what it is. That's an argument from incredulity.
no, I'm pointing out that this is literally fallacious if it's not this way, and y'all
Where
aren't
is the
listening to what
fallacy?
I'm saying.
You keep saying that. Where is the fallacy? Where is the
I
contradiction?
asked the question that I asked was from what we have observed, which is a lot. What is not independent to something else that is dependent? What has ever been the case that is only interdependent? If you can substantiate that, you will prove to me that God does not exist.
So again, you were just explaining how in modern physics there is this kind of loop effect between causes and effect and causes. So this notion of interdependency, the way that you're looking at it, is incorrect. It's not. You still want to hold to this view that there are these clear set causes from which these clear set effects come from, and that's not what modern physics is telling us. There is the it's like there's like a looping phenomenon going on here, and so like you're just ignoring what the science is telling us.
What?
We
We literally agreed that it's interconnected.
But it doesn't mean what you think it means. Clearly, you
Okay,
think
so
you think that
I'm not ignoring anything
interconnectedness,
though.
but you are. You're claiming that this idea of interconnectedness is leading to some notion
A
of
cause.
fundamental causality, and that's
Yes,
not
please
the case.
substantiate that it does not. That something
We
interdependent.
have. I don't think you're.
I
We
would
have.
like to argue with M. Deer. over this because I feel like I can substantiate it, and then I feel like y'all can't substantiate your side.
Yeah, we've substantiated the entire time. Like you, and again, I'll leave it to the audience to decide. But I feel like my brother has gone into detail as to why what you're saying doesn't match your modern
Yeah,
physics,
because
and you're just saying you're just like closing your ears and going no, like that's not on us. Like
so he's saying that A causes B. We can use B to lead back to A.
Well, it depends what you
No,
mean by
that's
lead
not what
back,
I'm
because
saying.
I'm talking about modality.
yeah, that's not what my brother said, Aden. You're not following. You're not tracking.
But that's not what I'm saying. So you're distorting what I said.
So you're saying it's not necessary or it's not true. You're saying either. So it's not true that law that cause and effect is necessary. Basically.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
So then, if that's not what you're saying, then I'm right.
No,
that would have to be what you're saying.
Okay.
David, this is the shit I have to deal with on a daily basis.
This is no longer. I think we've reached the end. Anyway, my phone is dying, guys.
Okay, David, thank you
All
for coming on.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, I would like to.
All right. Bye-bye.
I'd love to have you back at some point, potentially a more fruitful conversation.
Yeah,
okay, but give me a coherent argument that we can sort of butter.
Yeah, I know. This was just kind of to show what I wanted to show, which I think is successful.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, David. All right.
So Mdir?
Yeah, Mdir, you want?
Oh, yeah.
So we've
I'm still here. I wrote down your premises here. So, yeah. Well, let me just read it back to you. You can tell me if this is accurate. Yeah. So, all interdependent things have an independent reason for its existence, or some independent explanation for its existence. Premise 2: space and time are interdependent. Conclusion: space and time have an independent thing for its existence.
No, for the second premise, I said space and time are interdependent, and since this is how it has always been for nature, then space and time would have to have an independent thing to it.
Wait, this just sounds like a separate inference where it's going to be interdependent things. If they've always been interdependent, then
no, they've always. So first, read the first premise again.
Yeah, first premise: all interdependent things have an independent thing for it to exist.
Yes. Second one, leading all the way up to space and time being interdependent. Since in my first premise, all interdependent things, like a heart and a brain, has an independent thing to it for its existence.
I don't grant hearts and brains are interdependent. I would just say they're dependent.
So then what would you say is, you wouldn't say a heart and a brain is interdependent?
No, I would say they're dependent, right? So so interdependence is going to be some sort of thing where A relies on B for its existence and B relies on A for its existence.
No, interdependent just means being dependent upon one another.
Yeah, like two things, they're both dependent on one another. But the heart and brain are just dependent. They're just going to be dependent on something. They're just going to be dependent on matter or something.
So you're telling me the brain? Is that what you're saying? Is that the brain can't function without the heart? And the
yes, I'm saying yes. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. So
it's interdependent.
That's not for their existence. That's for some certain functions of them. It's not for their.
No, existence. That's for it to happen, basically.
Yeah. No, the brain can just exist without a heart. That's fine.
Sure.
I'm saying for it to function, each other. I worded it wrong. Then I worded it wrong earlier. I meant function, and I'm saying existence just because we exist, and I was caught up on that.
So are you suggesting that space cannot function without time, and time cannot function without space?
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
Right, so
which is the interconnectedness of it, which is what we all agreed to. We literally just got done.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's
nothing about that. There was nothing
about
that.
I'm not totally on board with his argument. I get where he's trying to come from, but the idea of space and time being interdependent or dependent in his argument is that since that leading up to that, it's always been that way, then you have to make the argument of what are they dependent on.
Yeah, but that's the whole idea, is that it's an assumption to think that they have to be
Sure.
dependent on
It's
You
not
something
an
can
else.
assumption. It's literally
well,
the
No, it is
facts
an
of
assumption.
how it's
I think
always
it's an
been.
No, it
assumption in
doesn't.
the terms. It's an assumption in the terms of
Yes.
science. Like
So we're
Hold
saying
in
on.
that
the
it doesn't.
in the terms of science, they're never going to make the leap to that. They're always going to be
Obviously.
like, it's just something unknown. It's emergent, and there's a mystery, which I think your brother did
Yes.
agree to. Is
Wait,
that
but
it's a
yeah,
I
mystery,
agree to that. I
wait,
agree that
but
science will say
yeah,
that too.
Hold on.
I agree.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, but oh, go ahead, Cease.
No, go ahead, MJ.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, so as Aiden, you yourself stated earlier, right? If we're just gonna like, I'm just gonna grant you that like time is dependent on space and space is dependent on
It's
time.
not no
But then,
granting. This is what we agreed
wait,
to with the
wait, wait,
physicists.
wait. But then they're just gonna be explained by each other, right? The thing they depend upon is just gonna be each other.
Yes. So let me substantiate. Let me substantiate that. Since this is you'd have to basically, for your premises, you would have to make a premises
I'm
for
not
your
making
argument.
premises. Well, I'm agnostic. I'm not defending some view.
You're arguing as if you are atheist. So I would like to have a
No, I'm
premises.
Not at
arguing
all.
as a skeptic. I'm arguing as skeptical of the premises of your argument.
Okay, let's be
Aiden.
skeptical. Okay. So first premise, what was my first premise?
Yeah. Your first premise was that all interdependent things have an independent thing for it to exist.
Or function, yes. And
Or
then
function. Yeah, so I think that there's going to be, right, there's going to be dependent things that just depend on other dependent things. I'm just think premise one's going to be false. Like, look, I depend on my mom for my existence. My mom's not independent, right? She depends on some other facts for her existence.
she doesn't depend on you though.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's how it's always been.
Oh, what's your point?
So
Yeah,
that
look, premise
argument.
one's still false. Premise one's still false then.
How?
Yeah, because look, I'm my dependence is just going to be explained by something else dependent, not something independent.
Your mom is independent to you. Is
Yeah,
she not?
that's fine.
Is she dependent on you?
No.
Then premise one is correct.
Wait, no, not as you stated it. Not as you stated it.
Hold
Okay.
What?
on. Can I just?
I
Just
literally said
hold
I
on.
was making an argument for
One
since
second,
space
Aiden.
and time is interdependent.
One second, Aiden. Dorm wanted to say something.
So by the way that we view our reality, interdependence in space and time come from just our perception of it. And it's like how we evolved to view these things. There's a like ontological sort of notion and how we go about it, regardless of like science and stuff. We evolved in a certain way. So all I'm trying to understand is how can you grant that this type of relationship of cause and effect is something that's fundamental of our reality?
That's the truth. Is that how you're using fundamental, or that it's necessary?
That it's something that is basically what grounds everything in our universe.
Everything in the universe is dependent on something. Obviously, if we can go all the way back to space and time and say that it is interconnected, for anyone to disagree that everything in the universe is dependent on something would be intellectual dishonesty.
No,
What I'm
that's
saying, no.
not.
What I'm saying is that's how we perceive that relationship in
But,
time.
hold on,
There's
let me jump
no.
in. Sorry, because this is Jeremy crazy. You continue to conflate dependency with cause and effect being in one way.
No, I'm not even talking about cause and effect right now. I'm just stating right now, all I am stating is that if we can go all the way up to space and time being interconnected, meaning they're both dependent, then what I'm saying is everything else below it that has been made after that, from that, or from whatever happened scientifically, is still dependent. So for one to argue that not everything is independent or not everything is dependent in the universe, then they would have intellectual dishonesty. I'm not saying cause and effect right there.
I would just, maybe if I'm just trying to understand, is that like with Aden, I think he's taking the general premise, or I guess you could say it's an assumption that what has been always will be, and we haven't as of yet seen anything differently. So he makes that assumption that if we're seeing all these dependent things that need something that, you know, are
Independent to
dependent
it.
on, well, right,
But that
that need
doesn't
something to
logically follow.
exist. Well, I'm just
Oh my
saying, he's
gosh.
saying that, like, if he needs something, if we all need something to, you know, we're all dependent upon something, because we've known that, and, you know, as far as science has gone, that's what we've seen, then he makes the assumption that there has to be an independent cause. I'm not saying that that's a scientific thing. It's not. It's an assumption. It's a leap that he makes,
Sure.
and something that
But
you can't scientifically, it's not a scientific argument. It's more of just a, you know,
Philosophical.
Yeah.
It's
right.
logic.
Yeah. I
Going
mean, look,
That's
Exactly.
why
I
I
can
call
just
it a logical
posit.
argument.
Yeah, look, I can just posit like two principles. So like, let's say one's going to be, right, that everything which is dependent has some independent explanation, and then the other principle is going to be that everything that's not mutually dependent, right, it's just non-mutually dependent, has an independent explanation, right? How does any of the inductive evidence that you've given support one of those principles over the other? It just seems like it equally supports both of them.
I would say science probably supports that either one can be true.
Science
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
supports the
Right.
first one for sure, and then I'm saying that it supports the first one and the second one because leading all the way up to space and time being interconnected, which is both dependent, that is how it's always been leading up to that. So I'm
Yeah,
saying what
but they have
follows from
mutual
that.
dependence, right? They have mutual dependence. That's different than the dependence in all the examples you gave.
Our heart and brain are interconnected in sense of functioning. For all of us to be functioning right now how we are, that is how it's
Well,
that is how it's always been.
now look, people just have pacemakers. Their brain's functioning, their heart isn't. Like,
Their brains function without their heart.
I don't know if
but
that's right.
we're
I'm just,
even so when we're talking about like we're talking about like some dependence for existence. We're not talking about some dependence for function or something.
yeah, you're
I think maybe
conflating
Aiden's trying to
concepts.
say that since science thus far has seen that things are interdependent and that there's nothing that doesn't depend upon something, and that cause and effect are, you know, I know your brother said that they're not fundamental, but we see cause and effect a lot, then, you know, he's saying that it's a reasonable assumption to say that there is something independent
I
for
don't,
all these things to exist,
but I
because
don't think
that's
it
what
but
we've
like
seen in
follows.
science thus far. But I'm saying it's still it's not a scientific argument, it's a philosophical
But
argument.
it's
I don't think it's a philosophical argument either. I think it's making
It's a
a
deductive
jump.
argument. It's literally a philosophical
Well,
argument.
yeah, but I know he's not, like, it's not proof definitively, because now we're in the
I mean,
talks
it's a deductive
of
argument. Like it's valid. It's
sure,
just, or at least the way that I wrote it is valid. It's just I'm contending with the soundness, right? I'm just saying that
yeah,
there's this first premise, there's this principle asserted in the first premise, and I'm just unconvinced that any of the inductive evidence is going to support like that premise over the alternative that I gave.
yeah. I mean,
Over the alternative
you
of
can
two
say that it
dependent things.
doesn't. Yeah, I
Yeah,
Okay,
mean,
but
you
no,
can.
the alternative is
logic.
all non-mutually dependent things have some independent reason for their existence. That's the alternative premise that I gave. I don't
Okay,
Well, I
see
think
how,
it takes
yeah.
more of a skeptic. You're just taking more of a skeptical approach
you're a
to it.
philosopher, right? You're a
So
philosopher because I don't believe you're a philosopher if you don't
She
believe that infinite regression is a fallacy.
It's not a
Oh, that's
fallacy.
hilarious. Wait, that's actually
Oh my
hilarious.
god!
Look, there's a huge philosophical
Holy
debate. Look, I
shit!
could just cite you papers like all day long about philosophers disagreeing on whether or not like infinite regressions are impossible. Look, like there's going to be people like
Why is it not?
Proust who thinks that some like like certain types of regresses like causal regresses are impossible, but they're going to be fine with other types of like infinite regresses. And then there's going to be people like Alex Malpass, right, who like present arguments for why actually like causal regresses are possible. Like this is just a huge debate. So you just saying that like you're not a philosopher if you don't deny or if you don't like affirm causal finitism
And
or
and
other
this
types
is
of finitism is just hilarious.
that is
That's
where I get
I have
laughable.
triggered.
evidence. Where's your evidence that
Aiden, no,
infinite regression is not
hold
a
on,
logical
stop,
fallacy?
stop,
If you look
stop.
up if it's a
Aiden,
logical fallacy
stop.
right
It's
now,
not a
it'll say
logical
it is.
fallacy.
I
It's not a logical
promise it'll
fallacy
say
at
it
all.
will. Look
It's
up
not.
ask is infinite regression a
you have
logical
to
fallacy to Google and it will say it is literally.
Uh,
no,
That
you
is
have to
Yeah,
verify
impossible.
your source.
Wait, what is a formal fallacy? I just take a formal fallacy to be some invalid inference. What's the invalid
I
inference?
It's
don't know what these
invalid.
words mean. This is the. I'm sorry, but I need to jump in for a second. This is what triggers me: is the arrogance of people like you, who you just made the claim. If you don't believe that an infinite regress is a fallacy, you're not a philosopher. Like, that is a severe level of cluelessness. Like, how many I can send you? Like Enmir just said, we can send you paper after paper of philosophers with PhDs who teach this for a living, who don't share that view. Does that mean they're right? No, of course not. But for you to say that you're not a philosopher unless you hold this view is absurd. And again, where is the fallacy with an infinite regression? Where is the fallacy? I think are you still there?
I think he's here. I don't know if he's like trying to
Is
look
there
it
an
up or
echo?
something. I think he's here. I don't know if he's like trying to
I
look
think
it
on
up.
your end
Is there
there's
an
an echo.
echo? No, I'm not looking anything up. I had to charge my phone,
Yeah, there's Aden. You might
but
want
it's in my car.
to jump off and come back in because I do hear an echo.
How do I fix this?
Oh, just drop and rejoin.
Let's just hurry up and finish this argument, and then I'll turn my car off.
Okay, so tell us what the fallacy.
Okay.
Oh, there is an echo.
Tell you what the fallacy is for what?
Can you just drop and rejoin real quick?
Yeah, that was insane.
Oh, I just want to see an invalid inference given in its
I
logical form.
don't want interruption anymore. I don't want an interruption anymore. My phone is dying. It's at 12%. So
Yeah, so tell us, Ender, you ask him. I'm getting so tired of this.
Oh yeah, look, I just take I take a formal fallacy to be some form of invalid inference. So I just want you to give the inference that's entailed by like affirming some infinite regress.
that's saying infinite regress to say something. Do you know what an infinite regress? Can you tell me what an infinite regress is?
Well, it
Since
depends
I feel like
there's different types. There's different types.
there's different
going to be
types.
there's going to be temporal regresses, causal regresses. I don't know which one you
Infinite
think is
regression.
fallacious.
So,
Yeah, those are all infinite regressions.
So when I look up infinite regression, it's going to give me all those other ones. It's not just going to say what infinite regression is.
Well, no, there's different. So there's going to be regresses of causes, regresses of moments in time, or regresses of dependency relations, regresses of like platonic. Like there's just different types of regressions, of infinite regressions.
Tell me if you agree with this definition of the overall meaning of infinite regress, which it says a series of appropriately related elements with the first member but no last member, where each element leads to or generates the next in some sense.
So yeah, that sounds like some sort of dependence regress. Yeah, that's fine. I grant that that's the definition that you're working with.
Yes. And you're saying that is not fallacious.
No, I don't see why it would be.
How is an infinite dependency possible?
I'm not claiming that it is. I'm agnostic. I want the argument that it's impossible.
And I made my argument. My argument is that since this is how it has always been, it is impossible. It is impossible to all of a sudden change. It is impossible to all of a sudden change.
He's taking the assumption, which is philosophical in nature, that it's always been this way. And it's not
impossible
a
to just
way
change just because you want it to change.
I'm not disagreeing with you. Is that we haven't seen where it's possible, but they're saying that it's not impossible because they take a skeptical scientific approach to it.
Well, look, no, I'm just not convinced that an infinite regress is in principle impossible. I don't see how anything you said. I don't think how anything you said contends with that. Yeah, sure.
Let me explain to you how it's impossible.
All right, explain.
So, since this is how it's always been, premise one. Since this is how it's always been, it is impossible for just because
premise one's not even a proposition.
No, see, look.
Premise one's not a proposition. Your argument's already off to. Your argument's not going to get off the ground.
You haven't shown that that's how it's always been. Oh my god. Okay, let me give you an example. I've always been a brunette, right? My hair's always been black.
Okay.
Or dark. Does that mean that I couldn't dye my hair tomorrow blonde? I mean, I would look terrible, but like that. What does the fact that it's always been a certain way have anything to do with what is actually the case?
I'll prove that to you. since space and time is interconnected, for there to be something that's fully independent, it would not be within a dependent thing. Dependent thing does not make an independent thing. That's my proof of that. It has literally always been like that. It's literally like common sense.
Well, isn't
Common
what your
sense
brother says
doesn't
as far as the
equate.
nature of time and space, since so far as they've gone back, that it's always, from what they've seen anyway, it's been this way always.
It has been this way. It's literally been this way.
Right, but that's what he's saying from his physics point, and then he takes the philosophical leap that it's never going to be different, I guess.
Yeah, let me explain why it's impossible to M. Deer. Let me explain to why it's impossible. Please do not cut me off, because this is my final.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm saying that is so, since this is how it has always been. Whenever we get to space and time being interdependent, it is impossible for it to just change right then, just because it wants to change right then, just because we don't want God to exist. That's why it is impossible.
Can I ask a question?
Wait, I think it was directed at me. Yeah.
No,
So
sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
if in your justification for why some dependence regress is impossible, you just state as one of your premises that the cause dependence regress is impossible, and that's just the most clear example of begging the question that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
How?
Yeah.
Your conclusion showed up in your premise.
My conclusion showed up in my premise where? My conclusion is saying there's something independent. Not my whole
No,
premise is
wait, that's not what
dependent.
I asked the argument for. I asked the argument for the dependence, an independent dependence regression was impossible. That's what I asked.
Oh, if a dependent regression is impossible? Okay.
Yeah.
So a dependent regression is impossible. Oh, how that? Okay, I see what you're saying. I see what you're asking. Okay,
That's why I was confused.
it would be an infinite dependent regression. Like that is not how things have been. So for that to not be how things have been, because there's always been something independent to dependency, then I'm saying that that is impossible, because there's no independent thing in front of the two dependent things of space and time. So that's why I'm saying it's impossible.
Wait, you're saying that it's impossible because it's like a dependent infinite regress. Well, that's just the same
No.
thing.
There is not a dependent infinite regress. The dependent infinite regress starts at space and time.
Wait,
That's when it
you're just
starts.
arguing that it's impossible, and your argument for its impossibility is that it's not the case. I'm not granting that.
Yeah.
That's
No.
amazing.
Let me explain.
He restates the same thing and he changes
You're
an
not
argument.
listening
It's
to me. You're not
mind-boggling.
listening to me. Y'all aren't listening to me. What I'm saying is,
I'm listening.
since the dependent regression starts at space and time, it within our nature of how things have always happened, there has always been something independent
Yeah.
for something dependent to function or exist. So what I'm
Right, and
saying
this
is,
is, yeah.
so what I'm saying is, when the infinite, the dependency regression starts at space and time, it is impossible for that to just all of a sudden start when that's not even how it's been.
That makes no
What if
sense.
it's always
Yeah,
been?
I think he's just saying within the general assumption that since things have always been this way, and that's a precept, right? I
Well,
mean,
Yeah,
we're
that
taking
is
a
a
precept that
presupposition.
it's always been this way. Then he's saying that there's a plausible independent source that
Of
we
this.
may not know yet, and he's ascribing that to, he's making the leap that it's God.
So yeah,
You
I'm about
have
to say,
to.
quick question, real quick. With that, like, in because I was trying to follow it, but it was like it seems like you just it in the sense of you saying, like, you're saying that space and time had to have a beginning or a cause, right? And
Yes.
that in and of itself would be a presupposition to the fact that
Right.
we don't. Well, I didn't. Wait. Just let me try to finish,
Okay, I
and
got you.
in a sense, like, that would be a presupposition and in and of itself. But the rest of what you were saying is genuinely based on, and it sounds to me just based like on like one of the most like common fallacies that we hear within this argument, that being the God of the gaps. A, you presuppose that there's a start to the universe, and B, you're presupposing the cause of this start that you've already presupposed would be God.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, since it has always been this way, it is impossible for there to be an infinite dependency regression unless you can give me an example of it not always being this way, which
But
it has
Wait, when you
always
say
been, which
wait,
I
wait,
have
wait, wait, wait.
proven.
You
I have
can't.
wait,
You
proven.
AP, wait, hold on. When you say that it's always been this way, can you just be a little bit more clear about what you're referring to with
yeah.
it?
There has
The
always
nature of
been
space and time.
interdependent. There's always been interdependent or dependent things that have an independent cause to it
But hold
until we
on.
get to.
Okay, yeah, yeah,
You're
okay.
not
I can point out the
substantiating.
problem. Wait, I can point out the
Right.
problem with this, right? The argument's going to be, right, that dependence infinitism is false because dependent infinitism is true, right? The dependence infinitist is not granting that.
What is that starts? That starts whenever it has not always been that way, though. It
Yeah,
has literally never
you're
been that
saying that,
way up
yeah,
to space time.
yeah. So you're saying that it's not going to be an infinite regress because there's a stopping point, right? So that's just begging the question, right? It's just you're just saying that
Right. And
it.
it's not approaching it from science isn't going to, like you said, isn't going to make the precepts. It's just observing the world as it is. So
Yeah.
science could at some point, according to Amdir or anybody else who approaches it from an analytical skeptical
But
sense, is they say they could see that there was an infinite
Okay.
regress. They're saying that's
but we don't
possible.
have. But
It's not
we
proven
don't
though.
have a way to observe whether or not an infinite regress
Sure.
is a thing or not.
Right. There's total mystery to it, as what your brother said, that like we get to a
Which
point
is
where the
why Aiden
emergence itself
claiming
is
that it's a
mystery.
fact of the
Sure, but I
Aiden
think he's
claiming
maybe
that
not.
it's
I think at the very least, under his general precept, he's saying that if it's always been this way, then we
Why would
can
it
make a
change?
plausible argument that the independent entity or the independence that they need is God. I think is what he's trying
But
to say. But it's a precept
Aiden's
argument.
not
it
even.
Is
doesn't
what I'm
follow
saying.
anyway.
My
He
question.
hasn't
Even if
My
I
even.
was to
question is.
grant
My
all
question
that,
is. Well, here. Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Since there has always literally, which is literally proven just from the mere fact that space and time is interconnected, it has always been the case for dependent things to depend on independent to it things. Then why would that change as soon as we get to space time? Why does that stop? Like why would we just no further explanation?
How can you
Please explain
substantiate
that.
that that's always been the case?
Yeah.
I can
There's we don't
substantiate
have.
that. Let me substantiate it. Space and time are interconnected, which means they are both dependent. So, but they are independent to us because we depend on that to exist for us to exist. So what I'm saying is just from that very last thing, the very last part of our universe, which is dependent, I'm saying it's always been the case, which is literally proven just because of the mere fact that that is there.
No, the way
No.
that we perceive it leads us to believe that it's that way, but there's no
So,
telling that it.
Yeah, we don't have the
okay, let me ask
objective
you a
truth
question.
in
Let me
this
ask you
because
a
we
question
can't
then.
test it.
Oh, let me ask you a question. Is space, do we depend on space and time to exist?
We
So is space
depend
and time
on.
independent to us?
I think we
Okay,
observe
so it's
space and time.
independent to
Yeah.
everything. Oh my gosh. Please.
I'm
That's
I'm pretty
intellectual
sure we.
dishonesty.
Aiden, I mean, I understand
We
what you're.
depend
That's
on our
I
intellectual
understand what
dishonesty.
you're trying to
subjective
say.
experience of what we perceive in reality. That's what we depend on.
Yeah.
What we perceive. Okay, so I'm asking you. You exist right now. Do we depend on space and time for us to exist?
there's
I don't
nothing
know.
You
there's
don't
nothing
know?
about
Yeah. No.
there's nothing
You're
about it
saying we don't
that
know.
assumes from which you can deduce that a first cause must exist and that the first cause has to be a mind with intention that you call God. It doesn't even
I think
remotely follow.
within his
Yeah.
presupposition, he makes a plausible case.
I
I'm
mean,
not saying that like I think he makes a plausible case for an independent cause beyond space and time
even if
My
well,
within
premises
his
are not
presupposition.
fallacious. So
there
therefore it
it is
can be true.
fallacious. It is
Where?
fallacious. It's
Where?
your
Where?
argument
Where?
is unsound.
It's
Right, yeah,
unsound
Your
look,
how?
argument is
an
unsound.
His
argument.
argument is
Wait,
philosophical, Aiden.
wait.
It's
It's not a
logic. It's
definitive
deductive
proof,
reasoning.
is
Well,
what they're trying to
Wait,
say.
Aiden,
go. Wait, hold on,
Aiden,
Imdu.
wait. Yeah, your argument can be like not fallacious in the sense that it's in front, like it's valid, right? The argument can be valid, but still it doesn't mean that the premises are true. That's
Yeah.
where I'm not. That's where we're
The
contending with it.
premises are true.
Well, I mean, you can assert that. That's fine. Like I haven't got an argument for premise one, but
You
still
haven't?
waiting for that. No,
Okay,
no,
premise one. Let me
yeah.
go to premise one. Let me go to premise one. All interdependent things like a heart and brain, has an independent thing to it for it to exist.
At the same time.
My substantiation for that is the question that y'all are saying is not true, which is, do we depend on space and time for us to exist? Therefore, is space and time independent to us because it doesn't depend on us?
Yeah,
And that would
yeah, I can
substantiate it.
answer. Yeah, I'll say yes. Yeah, we're dependent on space and time. Yep.
Therefore, that first premise is substantiated that all interdependent things, like a heart and brain, has an independent thing to it from what we know up to space and time.
Yeah,
Right.
that's not
Within
going to be
within
wait.
what we
That's so
know.
this is actually not going to be a valid inference, let alone sound. So
How?
now I'm not
How?
contending with the soundness. I'm contesting with the validity, because what you're saying is for this universalized principle, right? That all things which are interdependent have or dependent have
Or
this
dependent.
independent explanation. What you're doing is you're pointing me to one example that has this property, and then you're using that one example to say this universal principle is true. That's not going to be a
It's
valid
not a
inference.
one example. The one example is literally the what was there for the Big Bang or whatever theory you follow that says the universe is even eternal. Space, matter, and energy was there, whether it was eternal or has a beginning.
Wait, hold
This
on,
So
hold on.
doesn't help.
It
This
The
can't be
Big Bang
doesn't
eternal, though.
interact
preceded
with what I'm
all of
saying.
those.
yes, it
The
does.
Big
You
Bang.
just
Wait, no, it doesn't. So
that's invincible ignorance fallacy.
no. Look, what
Oh
I'm
my
saying.
god, did you
Yeah,
just
you can just
throw
okay. Yeah, look.
fallacy around? Holy shit.
So what I'm saying, right, is if we have some principle, right? So let's say a premise of my argument is all marbles in the bag are red, right? And then
But
you
it's
ask
literally
me to
true.
wait. You ask me to substantiate that premise, right? Give an argument for the premise, and I say, look,
Yes.
I pulled a marble out of the bag, right? And it's red. Therefore, it's true that all marbles I pulled out of the bag are red, right? You can see why this is not going to be a valid inference.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying since the very last marble, since all of the marbles have been red to the very last marble, and the last marble is red, then since that last marble is red, then the whole bag was red,
Yeah,
which
Oh,
okay,
I
is
don't
but
wait.
true.
I don't grant that.
So what I'm saying is that when you pull out all the marbles and they're all red, and then you get to that last one is the thing that I'm talking about with space, matter, and energy, since that's the last part of the universe that could have always existed or had a start. It still is the first. It still is independent to us. It's the most independent thing to everything that has happened.
I
And I'm saying
disagree that
since
we pulled out all the marbles in the bag. That's the
right,
part that I
yeah,
I
disagree with.
wouldn't say we under. Yeah, I would say that the bag that the bag would be in human understanding, right? We would not have the entire bag out.
by
okay,
the way,
so
all of this is pointless because even
no,
if
it's not.
it is, because again, all you need to do is take the Graham Oppie approach, which he says, okay, fine, let's assume there's a fundamental, necessary aspect to reality, which everything else is dependent on. Nothing about that idea requires the assumption that this foundation has to be a God with intention that did anything. So you don't deduce God from what you're saying anyway. Even if I was to grant all of that, which
Y'all
is
aren't even listening to my argument.
we listened to your argument for about an hour. We
Well,
listened to all
Yeah,
of
yeah.
your argument.
Listen to
Well,
what
and
I'm
I think
saying.
your brother said that like we can't intuit those things because our intuition is flawed. You know,
Yeah, I
it's
mean, there's also that part. But
so
even
I
if I
think
want to
if
grant
anything, he
him,
made an argument that if
yeah.
we're going to approach the God argument, like it can't be done intuitively, it can't be done intellectually, and it can't be done analytically.
So
Like
even
it's
if I
just
want to
not going to
grant,
be done.
yeah. So even if I want to grant Aiden all the toys to play with, and ignore facts about causality, and ignore the fact that these things don't follow the way he thinks they
My
do.
premises follow science.
No, they don't.
Okay,
Well, I
what
mean, I
about
think
what?
yeah.
No, you literally
No,
had
I
a
mean, I
physicist on
Aiden,
here for
I
about an
agree with
hour.
you.
He agreed with
I
me. He agreed with me that it's interconnected and that
He agreed
everything
with
that
you on the
followed.
first thing you said, and disagreed
He
with you on the
agreed.
next
He agreed
99
with my
things.
first premise. Literally, he agreed that since that is interconnected, and he agreed that everything is dependent up to that point.
No, he didn't
He
agree
literally
with.
agreed.
He agreed with the first thing you said about interdependence, but he didn't agree with to what you think that means, and
No,
all
he's
the
not
things you said.
agreeing. Yes, I agree. I agree with what you're saying.
And
He didn't agree that it has to be cause and effect. But what I'm saying is my first premise was agreed upon. My
you,
first premise does not include It does not include cause at the beginning of space and time.
But your
It
notion,
just says there has always been a
but
cause
Aiden,
for
your
other things.
notion of interdependency, as you define it, is not the way that he understands it. That's the point. You have two different concepts of it, which is why he kept saying, I don't know what you mean by this question because it doesn't track the actual science. You're confused about what these terms mean. And again, even if I was to not focus on the fact that you've made the wrong inferences, that most of what you said has been unsound, let's pretend that it hasn't been. You still don't get from the idea of a necessary foundation to that foundation having to be a deity with a mind and intention and design. That doesn't follow. So you keep saying you prove God with logic and you're saying it's deductive. No, you have a story. That's all you've expressed.
That's literally like invincible ignorance fallacy.
No,
Right
it's pointing out the fact that you have
you're not even
no concrete argument. Look,
you're just
all you have to
so
do is look up
all you're
Graham
doing
Alpine.
essentially.
There's no ignorance here. You can
Yes,
throw
there is.
cards.
All you're doing essentially is saying you're not saying what is wrong. Like you're not saying that
No, I
me
am.
saying that this is
No, I am.
interconnected is wrong. You're not saying that me saying that since this is all interconnected, since your brother didn't say that, that since
No, I'm
that
saying it
everything
doesn't
else depends
follow.
on
It
this
doesn't.
independent thing to it.
No, I am pointing out the fact it's a total non sequitur to say that from a necessary foundation, that foundation has to be a deity. I'm pointing out exactly the error you're making. It is a complete non sequitur. I can agree about a necessary foundation and assert that foundation can be entirely natural, can be necessary,
Yes,
independent, but natural. And it's not going to get you to a God. So for you to
I'm
claim you're
saying
proving God with logic is laughable.
I'm saying that for nature is only dependent. Essentially, this whole argument is saying nature is only dependent, and this is an argument of should there be a cause or should there not be a cause.
I have no
And
reason to accept that there can't be some fundamental aspect of reality and nature that it isn't just dependent. That's you just asserted. You confuse making assertions with making arguments.
what
You
is
haven't
not
made
dependent? What is not
again. Look,
dependent about space and time?
do me a favor. I'm not talking about space. Do me a favor. Look up Graham Alpine. Look up what he says about naturalism,
No,
and then come back to me.
I've
Because
heard what you're talking about. I'm not gonna waste my time because this
if
is
you
literally
had, you wouldn't be saying that you've proven God with logic. Because
this
he can
is
hold the same idea of necessary independent foundation and have that not be a god. So you just
y'all haven't even proven agnostic to me in
I
this
don't need to prove
case.
anything. It's not.
Yet alone atheist.
What does it mean
There's
to
no need
prove
to prove that.
agnosticism? What does that even
You
mean?
haven't proven that this is a I don't know
I
situation.
don't need to prove anything. You're
Wait,
you're
what is
making
that's
claims. This is mind boggling to me.
hey,
This
I
is not
just
I
even
don't
said
an
even
agnostic argument
that
you can
just
make.
sounds like a category error. I don't even know what it means to like prove agnosticism. Like give some
Y'all
argument
no,
that
I mean,
what? Like
I think
what
the
would you
only
even
person
give an
that has
argument
listened to
for?
me is Whitney. I'd rather listen to what
yeah,
Whitney has to argue against what I'm saying than all of you, because y'all,
yeah.
it's literally invincible ignorance fallacy.
Well, I'm
Sure.
just saying,
Well,
like,
look,
Aiden,
you're
like,
just being the
essentially,
dishonest interlocutor.
Yeah, I think
I
you're
think Aiden, at this point, like, if anything, what you've proven with your assert, I mean, I understand what you're asserting, and I think it takes assumptions and leaps that aren't a part of science and not analytical. It takes presuppositions in order to do that, and I'm not against presuppositions. I'm not against it, but I think if anything, what you're proving is having an analytical scientific approach to proving God and using logic isn't how we are going to prove. It isn't how we're going to find God, is essentially. And they're not going to take these assumptions because science doesn't make the assumptions. They
Science
just
doesn't take assumptions, but logic, if the premises are
sure,
true, if the that what
right.
I'm saying, this is why I'm so worried about like my first premise and my second premise is
Mhm.
because if the premises are true and
Mhm.
it is sound, then
Mhm.
the conclusion is logical, which is
Right.
logic argument
Within
of
right,
logic.
within
oh,
your assumption and presupposition. Yes, I think you've made a plausible argument. But they approach all of this from, I guess you could say, a radical skepticism, is that
no, it's not even
No,
that.
just
that's not
because
true.
there isn't
I'm,
a
It's
I'm
not even that.
yeah,
well, I'm just
I'm
saying
not
that just
approaching it from
because
radical skepticism.
well, I mean, I think there is a certain amount of skepticism to his premise as far as this is how it's always been, but you're saying
Oh
that
yeah, I'm skeptical to
science,
his
right,
premises. I'm not skeptical to
right.
like other things. There's things I'm not
No. I'm
skeptical.
not saying that you approach everything in your life with radical skepticism. I
So
just mean, at least from when it comes to this conversation, I guess in science, it has a skeptical mind. It's not going to make an assumption. It's going to just keep going. And it doesn't assume that since something has always been, that means, you know,
let
God
me
or whatever.
clarify something that I think Aiden isn't getting. You can have a valid argument and it not be sound. But the fact
If
that
it
you think
follows science, it's sound.
the fact that you think you're proving God with logic, again, is laughable. You haven't done anything remotely close to that.
So y'all are telling me you've taken philosophy class. What does your philosophy teacher? What did your
Holy
professor
shit,
tell you?
Aiden!
What did your
I just think
professor tell you?
within
Let me
his
ask you. Let me ask you.
presupposition,
Let me ask you.
he's proven that that it's plausible. There's
Teacher of
there's
philosophy
an
class.
independent cause to all the dependency,
Yeah, wait,
Aiden,
seemingly,
I don't
within
like
his assumption.
disagree that this like going to be a plausible account. Like we can say that it's like a plausible account. All I'm contending
yeah,
with is
sure,
that there might be other plausible accounts, and
Sure,
then and I don't see why I'd accept like one
sure.
over the other.
yeah.
And then
I've never,
Cease's point is just that even if his plausible account is the right
Hmm.
account, it still doesn't get him to God.
yeah, exactly.
No,
I've
I
never
mean,
said,
because then we're just talking about generic like a generic deity that's up there, like,
uh,
and then you have to really go into like the nature of him, and
No, we don't
that's
have to
not
go
a
into
scientific
nature. The
Well,
approach.
only thing that is about deism is the words independent and necessary. That's what deism
yeah.
is.
Again, there's
well,
nothing about
depend.
those
Wait, does
ideas.
deism not deal with like having a mind at the very least, like some sort of
No,
deity with
it's
a
just
mind?
independent and necessary. No
That's
mind.
That just okay. I mean, that
Since it's
just
outside
sounds
of
like
nature,
indistinguishable from like some Neoplatonic one or something.
yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
it's literally come up with this
No,
term. It's literally come
exactly.
up to be like that is because nature is fully dependent on things. So for it to be independent, it would have to not be a part of nature, which is why deism is
No,
called
no,
independent and necessary.
no. You can have views on nature that are necessary.
It doesn't
You
have a
can have
mind.
views.
Deism is not for. It does not. It does
So,
not
so
No,
entail
it's
mind.
mind.
wait,
So
That's
wait,
not true.
wait,
it's
wait,
technically is mind
Aiden.
independent. So how is that any different than naturalism?
Theism
Uh,
literally
because
requires a mind.
naturalism is not
Wait,
independent.
like I
This is
can just say
garbage.
that I believe in some Platonic object, right? I can say I believe that like numbers are Platonic objects or something. Like they're not going to depend on anything for their existence, and they're going to be necessary. That doesn't mean that I'm believing in a God.
Theism
What do
That's
you
what a
actually
mean?
god
Hold on.
is.
doesn't
What do you
imply
what do you
God is
force.
mean
not a
that
part of
nature
nature.
is not independent? Like nature is independent from you. Like so, if you take yourself out of the equation, nature will still thrive and survive
Is nature
just as it
fully
is
independent?
without you. So
You can
you're
just
not.
define that one independent thing as nature, though.
Right.
It depends on what you
Exactly. Thank
define
you.
as
That's the
nature.
point. That's what Oppie does.
Is
He
So,
independent?
so, so you
says,
can't say that nature isn't independent.
Nature is no. I'm saying nature is independent to us, but is it fully independent? No, because space and
Yeah.
time are
How can you
interdependent.
say that? How can you
space
say
and
It's
that?
time
not
are
independent.
derivatives of
But
nature.
but there's one independent thing that you're talking about. We can just define that as nature and say that nature is independent. Like you realize it.
Since
It comes
nature is
down to
not, since space and time is interdependent, deism is not. It means something that is not a part of nature, which would be
That
independent. That's the
makes
only
no.
way
what I'm
independency is
saying is that it
possible.
comes down to what we define as nature. So if we found out that this final thing that you're talking about is actually real, we would just define it as nature. We wouldn't define it as anything else. It would be a part of our reality.
But it's not scientific, so
Why
it's
not?
not a part of science. So
What?
therefore, it's not nature.
How is it not
That
scientific?
makes no sense at all. What?
What do you mean it's not like we
Science only
we just can't.
entails cause and effect.
Do you mean like we
Science
just
takes
can't
what?
reach it? Is that what you mean?
The only thing that happens in science is cause and effect.
Okay. Okay. I
I'm
know.
not sure what you're trying to say, but
What I'm saying
Literally.
are
is,
you trying to say like it's
Okay.
unreachable by
I can't.
science, so therefore it's not a part of nature?
I'm saying science is nature. A deity is not nature, and science is all fully dependent, like interdependent to the very end of things, which is
I
space and time is independent,
don't
interdependent.
Well,
understand the
would
word
we
you're using.
say things in nature and space and time that they
Wait,
are
but
with the beginning, that
the
that
problem.
they're finite? They're not
Sorry.
infinite. We're not saying that. I mean, I know that they make the claim that like the universe is expanding and thus far we're seeing independent, like it's infinite. But we're saying like nature itself is finite. It has a beginning.
So anything that's
No, I'm
finite
saying
is
even if it's
defined as nature.
infinite. I'm saying even if it's infinite, it would just be an infinite regression, then, which is
Right,
not
but there's
possible.
also like, well, we haven't established the infinite regression's impossible, but I'm just not even gonna go back over that again. Like, look, naturalism could be false and theism still not be established, right? Like, it could just be platonic objects or something. What would be the issue with that?
Because if it's an object, it would be a part of nature.
No, no. Look, the platonic objects are just going to be like, yeah, things which are immaterial, don't engage in causal relations, that sort of thing.
But
They're
is it
not the sort of
independent?
things. Yeah, they're not the sort of things that can be studied by scientific methods.
Is it independent though? Like, is it something that would be a cause to everything that's
Wait,
independent?
is it independent? Like, is it caused? Is that
Fully
what you mean?
independent. Fully
Yeah,
independent
yeah,
to even
yeah,
space and time.
yeah.
If it's independent to space and time, then it would be the cause of space and time.
To
No, that
me, this
doesn't
just
What?
seems
follow.
like a
That doesn't
semantic
How,
wait. That
debate.
doesn't follow. Wait, hold on. Wait, hold on. So if there's like a platonic object, like let's just say the number three is just a platonic object, right? Spaceless to
Yes.
material. Yeah, it's but
If it's independent
it
to space
doesn't
and time.
it doesn't wait. It's a contradiction for me to say that there's this thing that doesn't engage in causal relations, and then you to say this thing that doesn't engage with causal relations
this is
caused
fine.
the material world. That's just a contradiction.
How?
All right.
Yeah, it's something
Okay,
that doesn't engage in causal relations and it's causing something. That's a contradiction.
It
for you to
caused an
ask how,
effect. What I'm
I
saying is there's no cause in nature. It's all an effect.
You're not tracking.
okay.
Well, my
You're
phone's on
giving me
1%, but
yeah yeah. I'm gonna let you go because your phone's about to die anyway. Thank you for coming on.
and
Holy fucking shit. Okay, listen, this is giving me brain damage. Okay, I've never met somebody who is so convinced to understand philosophy and science and logic and have no even close to an understanding of what these concepts and topics are actually saying. Like, I just can't. Oh, I'm triggered.
He's a
Okay,
tough one.
what's that?
He's a tough one.
Well, it's if somebody can't, it's just so close to actually, or is incapable of getting from point A to point B. Like Amdir just said. I mean, and I don't even believe in abstract objects, but he said he posed the idea of abstract objects not having causal relations, and Aiden's response was, "Well, did they cause? They must have caused the physical world." Like at that point, you're just not processing what's being said. You're just not understanding. And he keeps saying we didn't understand his argument. We understood your argument perfectly fine. You're incapable of actually providing a sound argument. And again, I'll say it one last time. Even if I was to agree with the idea that there has to be a necessary foundation from which everything else comes from, that can be nature. You're saying the universe is an
Yeah.
effect. You have no evidence of that. The, time and space can be descriptors of our reality. It doesn't mean that it caused the universe. That's not nowhere in the philosophy or the science is that being. And again, you saying cause is necessary is ignoring what my brother, who's a physicist, was telling you for about an hour and a half, which is causality is emergent, not fundamental. So if you want to just close your ears and ignore what the data is to fit your own narrative, you can do that, but you haven't proven anything except that you are motivated by your own bias and your own agenda here. So
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah, I
think
mean, I just
I
think
was trying to
like
butt in.
from
Oh no, my bad. You can go ahead.
no, it's okay. I'm not trying to interrupt you.
All
I
right.
just think within his, I think maybe the final misunderstanding with him is that there is an assumption and and a a presupposition that he takes which aren't in the realm of science. Um, and within that presupposition that he does take, then he makes a plausible case for some independent that has no dependency on anything else, and an independent cause that you know created everything, I
it,
guess you can say,
it,
or emerged from everything, or whatever you want to say. So like he makes that plausible, but like that's the problem, is that there's no, you guys, uh, or at least some of the people in there, you're going to reject precepts because you have a scientific analytical approach, is that there are things that we don't know. Like your brother said that like there's deeper things, it's hidden that we don't know yet, you know, but we're still working on trying to know, and it could be something different from what we've always seen.
Aden is in the comment saying time and space is the last part of nature. That doesn't mean anything. Time and space are types of descriptions of how the nature seems to operate. And even then, it seems like these things are emergent, not fundamental. So you're wrong on every level here. I
No,
want to hear.
he's also vastly wrong on time, because time is just by definition, it's the measurement of movement. So if you have a thought, you're creating time. You move, you're creating time. You wave your finger ever so slightly,
But
you're the
right.
measuring of time. So it's
Well,
I think
doesn't,
for the
like,
most
correct me
part
if I'm
y'all
wrong,
agree
but
though.
doesn't science thus far, like, at least from what they're observing of the universe, they're saying that it's infinite, right?
No, I don't think there is any. There's no consensus on that.
There's
Um,
not consensus.
Nobody
Okay.
no,
But
knows.
some
but
of them
I
make
want to
that
hear from.
assertion, do they not? Like, I just didn't know.
Uh, I want to hear from Ayo. What were you saying?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
I
go
was
ahead.
trying to say like I think for the most part y'all agreed. Like when it came to his core foundational argument was that there has to be some type of independent first cause for everything. And I think most of us can agree like that's at least plausible. So I think it's
Uh,
really just a semantics issue and him saying
Within
like,
his precept.
yeah,
It's
so I,
plausible within his precept, is what I'm saying.
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I don't
So,
fully agree
but
with the premise either.
he's just calling this thing unnatural. Like by
Mm
definition, it has to be unnatural. And I think that's where the main disagreement comes in.
Well,
hmm. Mm
but
hmm.
I don't even accept the first premise. I don't accept that everything must have a first cause because I think causality is emergent, not fundamental. So I don't think that's true. I mean, he again he literally sat here with a physicist who for an hour and a half broke down why causality is emergent, why it's a mistake to hold on to that intuition, and he went in one ear and out the other, and he thinks he's proven God through science and through logic.
Well, right,
It,
but he's not approaching it like you're like from a physicist approach. I think is essentially your argument is that he's not
but he
approaching
thinks he
it from
is.
a
But he thinks he is.
sure, sure. I
That's the
mean, you
problem.
can say that he's mistaken in thinking that because he knows some things about physics that this how some proves God, you know, and I just
And
think it's a wrong approach whenever we're talking about God in general.
and
So,
again, even if we were to just accept that there has to be a first cause, which I don't, it
mhm.
doesn't follow that the cause has to be God. Because again, if any of you look at Graham Oppy's argument as to why there can be a natural foundation as being the first cause, there is no issue there,
Right, but it's
and it wouldn't
plausible.
be the yeah. So he's viewing nature as having to be dependent, and that's not the only way to look at it. And he again, it's an issue of him. He wants to ignore every possible other view or defeater
Hmm.
for his argument,
Hmm.
uh, because he just again, he's a motivated. I forget the term, but uh, he's working with an agenda. Um, but I do need
He
to
kept he
get some
kept
food.
like insisting that he had some like that we were like being illogical because he presented some like deductive argument and we didn't accept the conclusion. But like we're denying a premise, right? That might be true if we're not denying any premises. I was very clearly the entire time, I think, skeptical why I'd accept the first premise.
Yeah, again, he just doesn't get it. Like both you, I, and my brother went into detail as to why his argument, and I say that in quotes, doesn't work, and he keeps saying that we haven't provided anything. It just I don't know. I mean, I'll leave it to the audience to decide how you think.
My favorite part was when I asked for a supporting argument, and the first premise of the supporting argument wasn't even a proposition. It's just like premise one, since it's always been this way.
He says nature is
Yeah, which
fully
is a
dependent.
precept,
He says
right?
Well,
nature is fully
that's not even a truth app statement.
Yeah,
yeah.
he's
It just
saying nature is fully dependent. Give me one thing that is fully independent in nature.
that doesn't make any sense. If we're saying that there's a aspect of reality that is independent from which all the rest of nature comes from, then there's no problem. I can pose that the
Hmm.
same way you can pose a god. Like you're
There's your answer,
confusing
Aiden.
things within nature with
Well, see, this
reality
is
itself.
why it's like it doesn't. This is why I'm like at this point where like you know you're not gonna
I
when
want
it comes to the question of it, Like, you're never, like, science isn't within that realm. It's not going to prove God in a sense. Like, it's just never going to. So, like, you just have to, in his mind, you know, the laws of logic or whatever, you know, from what we've seen and what we can infer from whatever science has told us about, you know, how nature and time have been since the beginning, I guess you can say, that you can make the plausible assumption that it's possible anyway that the the independent is God, you know.
Yeah. I mean, look.
But you can also make the plausible assumption of many other things, and you don't
Right.
have to go
Exactly.
to God, and that's your
Right.
point. But I'm
Yeah.
just
Like
saying that,
I've never
like,
said
it's a
God is impossible.
possibility within his presupposition, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's fine. Like I've never made a claim that God is impossible. But what I'm
Sure.
saying
I
is,
would,
Yeah.
you know, but
I would like to.
I do have to
I would
go
like.
soon.
I would like
Yeah, go ahead.
Aden to show me what to explain to me exactly what is not unnatural. That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Show me
Yeah, I'm
something that is
And
curious
not
too.
something. Show me something unnatural in this existence of this universe.
we,
The
Aiden, we've made
unnatural thing in
several
the
arguments,
existence of
and
the
I've given you
universe
the
would be
example
the
of
very
popping.
premise by
Oh,
which
sorry.
the universe runs. Everything that is measured, what he's saying is very true. I think that his articulation was not
Mhm.
sufficient, but the very
Mhm.
premise of the universe boils down to two things. Either the universe is its own premise, or it is premised upon something else. Either way, if it is its own premise, that makes it an axiom, and an axiom defies all other naturalistic cause and effect that's measurable. That's
Um,
unnatural in that context. And if it's
Mhm.
based on something outside of that, then that's easy to say. It's based on a principle which is not physical universe. Either way, it comes down to something that is outside of the mechanistic cause and effect that is measurable by science.
Mhm.
and there, I don't. Did you track any of that?
Yeah, I'm curious.
Uh,
So yeah,
Aden,
if
Aden,
someone wait, oh,
Wait,
are you saying
wait,
something,
Adam,
Adam?
hold on one second. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
So
Andrew.
yeah, like if you say something like the universe, or just understand the universe as space time or something, it's just gonna have some like. Well, you could either take the view that like space time is just going to have some necessary existence, or there's just going to be some necessary initial state that explains space time. I don't see where you're positing anything that's like contradicts the naturalist.
So the naturalist says that the naturalist comes to a wall, and the wall that uh, I'm discussing beyond that wall is that there are principles that guide or serve as the impetus for all else. That wall, when we come to the principle, is stated as it just is, the end, which is
Uh,
completely inconsistent with all of science.
Wait, no, I mean,
It doesn't make
No, I don't
sense.
think that's true.
I think any view
Yeah,
is going to come back to it's just is, and then the it just is
100%.
just going to be some contingent fact or some necessary fact. I mean, I don't think that contradicts with the naturalist. I don't think any naturalist is going to deny that.
Or you could just say that
Amdir,
you
I
They
agree
don't know.
do. A
100%. There.
naturalist does not accept that the apple falls from the tree just because. The whole premise of science is the identification of a antecedent cause. That's
But
the
no,
whole principle.
because there's a point where, like, you can always ask the why it is the case that it falls that way, or that that is the reality, and you're ultimately not going to be able to answer that why. Uh, there is a wall in all worldviews that gets to that unanswerable why.
That wall only exists if it's coming from a phenomenalistic, naturalistic point of view.
Uh,
Let me say
no,
phenomenalistic.
that's not true at all. Because even in a theistic worldview, you can always ask, well, why is God the way He is and not some other way?
I
Sure,
think
and even in that
because
type of
eventually,
worldview,
because you're gonna
it's
ask like we're
axiomatic, and so
because you're gonna
therefore
ask
there's nothing beyond that. But that's different because see that's thrown out. So a person who says because God said, the phenomenalist says that's nonsense because it's unfalsifiable and is premised upon itself. therefore it doesn't exist. But then when a phenomenalist says it is, there's always an absolute assertion because of a prior condition or impetus that's physical.
I don't
I,
really.
I would just agree that like naturalism is unfalsifiable. I think any like fundamental metaphysical theory is unfalsifiable. That's why we just look at things like theoretical virtues and stuff like that to discern between them.
Man, I was just getting ready to say that because I feel like, in a way, I think that conversations like these are kind of pointless in a way because there's so many things that we still don't know about the universe and especially the beginnings of our universe. So there could be totally wild factors that completely negate our entire argument. So I feel like arguing and trying to come to a solid conclusion on is there a God, is there not a God, I don't think we're ever going to get there, at least not in our lifetime.
Well, not in a
I think
scientific way.
what you
You're not going
said.
to prove God with science
Yeah, but
anyway.
that's kind of what I'm
I
saying
think
is that some things
what you
may
No,
just
just
said
lie
it's
right
beyond
there
you're
the
right.
human
I agree
is
with
the
understanding.
you.
whole point.
It's like an
What
ant
you
trying to
said right there is
understand
the
a
whole point. It's
macro.
not about coming to a conclusion of
Sure.
whether or not there is a God. I think it's about coming to a better definition of what is considered to be God.
Right.
When you
Okay.
say that there are, in fact, possible factors that are so outside of our current scope of knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
that in and of itself is the very definition that many hold to be God.
And this is the thing that, like, okay, so if they're like an uncaused cause, how did that uncaused cause come to be? Why is it necessary? Like, there had to be an uncaused cause for that cause, because an uncaused cause just couldn't have happened that way. And
Why
if
would
it did
there?
happen that
That's
way, why
contradictory.
is it
Yeah, I don't think that's true.
Well,
why
I'm just
isn't it
saying
just
that
not natural?
God would
But
be infinite. Is
that's
that he's
contradictory.
uncreated.
Yeah, that's contradictory because you're saying an uncaused cause would need a cause. If it was caused, it's not
Yeah.
uncaused.
Then it's
That's
not okay.
wrong.
So
And I
God would
Oh, but like it
necessarily
just
have to be
why couldn't that
infinite
uncaused cause just be nature? Like
Yeah,
why does it have to
exactly.
be
because
some
nature is finite. It has
well, no.
beginning.
No,
But it just
I
depends on
think
how
that
you define nature.
right. So I think I would say that it is nature. I don't think that nature has to be, and it also depends on what you mean by finite. But from my
I
perspective, and
mean, it
again, I
has
think
beginning. It's like within time. Like it had a moment where it didn't exist and then it came into existence. It has beginning and end.
I'm not
Well,
convinced
that's
that that's the case.
no, but that's both. Here's where I'm tying together both of what you're saying and what Cease just said, and
Mm-hmm.
to answer Adam's question all at once. They're one and
Mm-hmm.
the same. So on one level, you have the physical nature of the physical universe that's
Mm-hmm.
phenomenal, that clearly has a beginning point and
Mm-hmm.
clearly has dependency. But to
Mm-hmm.
what Cease just said, where he says there, it's just nature, meaning to Adam's point, well, the uncaused cause, that nature can be the uncaused cause. And if it is the uncaused cause, then that is the very premise as to what those who worship nature, the very beginning of religion before it became
Mm-hmm.
anthropomorphic, was about. That yes,
Mm-hmm.
nature, the universe, as it is, because it is in and of itself, is the uncaused cause. So it ties together when we go to the original conceptions of deity, that it was not anthropomorphic, but that it is in and of itself what it is, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore is worthy of recognition for all things that are and all things that could be.
So I think this is
I
probably the
mean,
first
100%.
time that I actually agree with you. Like, yeah, I can be
I
on board with
agree.
that.
Thank
If
you.
you're just gonna, well, the thing is, yeah. So, we can grant that, and then like, we're just gonna compare the theories by. I think we're just gonna compare the theories by some like agreed upon theoretical virtues. Just gonna be like explanatory power or simplicity. It's not gonna be by like giving arguments.
All right,
Agreed.
guys. I've been on for like almost 2 hours. I think. I
God
need to get
damn.
time to eat. But I will try to get my brother to come on here more often. Especially, I would like Saul for you to have a conversation with him at some point. I think that'll be interesting.
I'd love to.
Um, and but yeah, thank you everybody for coming on. And
Have a good one.
I'll be back tomorrow, I think.
All right.
So
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
good night, guys.